The Business Revolution.
Welcome, revolutionaries. This is Cherry.
And I'm Mick.
And I'm Alan. Together we're the three business musketeers who will guide you through the evolving landscape of business and sustainability.
In today's episode, we are diving into cutting-edge techniques that reduce environmental impact, to revolutionary ways of turning waste into valuable resources as mining steps into a new era.
I think everyone in the business sector these days is feeling the pressure. You know, we have to reduce emissions. We have to be more sustainable in our practices and so on. And understanding where to start is really crucial. And understanding which actions that actually have an impact is crucial.
Today, we're diving into a topic that is both vital for our planet and surprisingly full of innovation. Now, I know that you might be thinking that mining and sustainability don't exactly sound like they go hand in hand. But the truth is, there's a fascinating transformation happening in that industry.
We'll hear from a sustainability expert in the field and share success stories that prove sustainability isn't just good for the planet. It's good for businesses too.
So, whether you are a business owner or a climate advocate, or maybe you're just curious about the future of our planet, you wouldn't want to miss this episode of The Business Revolution.
And that's why we're thrilled to have Jenny Agnew, a true expert in sustainable mining practices, joining us today. Jenny has a passion for integration of environmental, social, and governance factors into strategic and operational decision-making. With over 22 years of experience in the resources industry, Jenny has a solid foundation of process engineering experience and a focus on linking cross-discipline expertise for improved outcomes, both at a company level and an industry level. At Sedgman, Jenny supports global strategic planning and leads the ESG working group.
ESG. Environmental, social governance. That's something, it's really on everybody's lips in the business world at the moment. What do you actually do in the ESG working group, Jenny?
We have a strategy for our business, which covers how we run our business itself, the power we use, the fuel we use, but also looks at our impact socially, so on our supply chains, and that both inside our business, our employees, but also the people that work for our suppliers, as well as, and this is, I feel, the biggest impact that our business has is our design of mineral processing plants, because they last for, 30 years. They use power, they use water. There's tailings that are created. So the way that we go about designing those and providing options to our clients when we're in the early concept design is one of the key ways that we can influence towards a more sustainable industry.
So what's your job in that? Is it like you're the influencer, or are you actually hands on the paper and sitting and making these plans?
A bit of both. It's a team effort. You can't do this work from an ivory tower. It has to be include people from all across the business. So we do have people from different regions, from different divisions in the company that all come together and agree what the right things to work on at the moment are, and try and keep ourselves accountable by meeting regularly to track progress.
You say there that what they have to do. So what sort of things are they doing or need to be done to mitigate the effects of mining?
Well, I'll take a little bit step back and talk about mining a little bit in terms of it's both part of the problem if we're thinking about decarbonisation, as well as part of the solution. So processing ores, as I said, can use a lot of water and power, and produces often a finely ground rock called tailings, which needs to be stored somewhere. And that can lead to environmental harm if it's not managed well. But on the other hand, we need these minerals to build the critical infrastructure for the green transition. So solar panels, wind turbines, transmission lines. And recycling is going to fill some of that demand, but we're still going to need an amazing amount of newly mined minerals to get towards the Paris-aligned goals. The International Energy Agency did a report a little while ago, and that estimated relative to 2020 demand, by 2040 we'll need 2.7 times more copper, 42 times more lithium, and 19 more times more nickel. So, and in addition to that, we need steel for building some of those infrastructure, and also for developing countries for building hospitals and bridges, those kind of things. So that's just to set the scene that more than ever, we need to plan mines with their operational impacts in mind, and also with the transition to a post-mining land use in mind as well.
Good place to start. It would seem to me that a lot of businesses are in the same boat, more or less. Everyone needs transport, and as it is at the moment, transport is a pollution, using fossil fuels and so on. So, tell us a little bit about, you could say the structural thinking that you put into this.
Sure. Well, there's a few things I might talk about. One's reducing emissions during mining, so at the mine site. So there are mining companies are really looking at reducing that through emissions of the fleet of trucks, so electrification of that fleet. And in terms of processing, which is kind of my speciality, some emerging technologies are quite exciting. In situ leaching can be appropriate in some circumstances, as well as surgical mining, and they really reduce their surface impact of mining. And there's also ore pre-concentration, low energy crushing, coarse flotation, and tailings dewatering, and all of those can reduce power, water usage, and surface impact. And I love that some of the super talented engineers at Sedgman are keeping really close to some of these emerging technologies, so that we can bring them into our standard practice as soon as possible. The second thing is leaving mines with a positive nature and community legacy, we haven't seen great examples of that a lot, but they're starting to become more common, and some good examples. So, because it's always good to share wins, they create momentum towards more wins. So there's a coal mine in Western Australia that's now a recreational lake with a rehabilitated landscape. There's a titanium mine also in Western Australia moving to relinquishment. They've had to cover some of the tailings in water so they don't impact the environment and the waterways, but that's now becoming a wetlands with an ongoing management plan. There are former gold mine sites that have had restoration of fish habitat by remining the tailings, and that gold's then becoming used in items such as jewellery. So that's like a sustainable product. Underground pits and surface water storage can be used for hydro projects. And, the problem at the moment is that some of the regulations haven't quite kept up with the thinking and the things that are possible. But I see some good involvement from government stakeholders in starting to think about how we might move on that. There are options for using already cleared and mined land for solar production, which might mean we don't have to clear sites that haven't been disturbed yet. And pits could be used for aquaculture or growth of algae for biofuels. There's a lot of options, and there's some really good examples across the world, and I want to see more of those. And I'd like to give a bit of a shout out to a not-for-profit company called Enviromet Queensland, which is starting conversations by bringing stakeholders together to dream about what could be and trying to make some really practical steps towards some pilot sites for testing out some of these options.
I think you touched on something really important there, which is, is this a bottom-up movement? Is this a lot of, employees that sort of make the push upwards towards their management? Or to which degree does it have to be the management that actually, gets it and then, directs the employees to take action? It's like the hen and the egg, isn't it?
It sure is. I think I'm going to liken it to the safety journey that the mining industry has been on over the last 20 years, in that it's something that has to be everybody's responsibility for it to be effective. So it's important for the people on the ground to be looking out about what they can influence, but also definitely for management to set direction and enable their teams and provide funding for projects that need that.
And how is that in your case, in your organization? Can you talk about that?
Sure. So I'm lucky that our managing directors are quite interested in these kind of things, and our company as a whole is really pushing into the critical mineral space, which is aligned with, the green transition. So, for example, we started to see that work in mine rehabilitation was going to become a bigger thing going forward, and so we've started a new business unit for environmental services. And the value that that's providing is that we can have these environmental experts be part of the conversation at the beginning of the designs, as well as provide standalone services.
I'm thinking about there where you're getting those people on board and having them there. And you mentioned earlier the innovation, the different ways of mining where, for example, you use, just picking one of the examples, you said, I can't remember what the technique was called, but it was where you don't even need to disturb the surface. And so when you've got these sorts of changes, they're changes in the way that we're thinking, the way that we're working. And sometimes there's a fear of doing something that's new in that respect. What can you tell us about how that innovation is being taken on board and things like regulations and old habits being overcome?
Well, it's, a bit 2 steps forward, 1 step back in reality, because business as usual is easier to get funding for. It's lower risk, so it's easier to find someone to foot the bill to start something up. Where you're doing something innovative, it takes a lot more collaboration, both with the regulator and with your financiers, so that they really understand what you're trying to do. So there is, some new things coming, but it is a little bit slow.
I like that point you made there, is that collaboration with the regulators. And I've heard that before, and I come from the IT world, and I've heard that sometimes where people have had regulations or just perceptions of regulations, and having those conversations with the source has made them achievable and you can get over them. So it sounds great that those conversations are happening. It shows what can be done to overcome hurdles. So thank you.
Jenny, you mentioned some really cool examples earlier of, turning some of that mining, I guess you can call it waste, into something that's more useful. But we don't hear much about that and what's happening. Is that something that, businesses like Sedgman are trying to share with the community? Because I think often there's just this view that, okay, it's just a hole in the ground and then you move on and the next.
Yeah, it's probably something that the whole industry isn't great at, which is telling stories well, something we can get better at. But in terms of things that are happening, one of my favorites in terms of thinking about waste as a resource is tailings from historic mines often contain some really neat things, because either the technology has gotten so much better that we can re-get that same thing out of the tailings because it wasn't recovered the first time. But often some of these critical minerals weren't even on the radar when those original mines were producing. So there's quite interesting things in some of these tailings dams, including cobalt and things that are needed for batteries. So reprocessing tailings, sometimes it's not always economic, but where there are projects where it can be. And it also provides the opportunity, if you're moving that material for a second time, to do something better with that waste and store it in a safer way. So that's kind of one of my favorite things to hear stories about.
So just replaying that one, it sounds like you're actually taking opportunities from what is waste at the moment. You're taking something out of that which is positive.
One example of that is the New Century mine, which is in the Gulf country of Queensland. And that was a historic zinc mine, and it went into care and maintenance for a while, and a company called New Century took that mine on and Sedgman was involved in reconfiguring the processing plant and reprocessing that before we handed it back to the client to run. And basically that was pulling more product out of the tailings and also provided the opportunity to put the tailings in a safer place.
I'm hearing of a word that comes to my mind here is adaptation. Moving from a plan, this is what we would do, and thinking and being able to rethink as you're going into something. Is that what's happening?
Yes, but it's difficult because when you applied for a regulatory approval for your mine, you said what was going to happen. So you have to get any new idea reapproved. So that takes leadership and vision and patience and possibly funding for that time. Yeah. But for sure, thinking differently is how we're going to be able to create an industry that's more sustainable to be able to produce the minerals that the world needs.
That's where the revolution part comes in, isn't it? Thinking differently.
For sure. Yep. So I'll also give a shout out to the Think and Act Differently group who were part of Oz Minerals and are now part of BHP, we had the opportunity to spend some time with that team and really enjoyed the process, exploring what a more scalable and adaptable mine might look like.
So how is the atmosphere in the mining industry as a whole? Is it optimistic, or is there how would you describe the atmosphere at the moment?
Well, I would say 5 years ago at a conference, it was quite technical. And nowadays, you'd be lucky if maybe half of the presentations weren't in some way related or 100% related to sustainability and ESG. It's really a massive topic. Everybody's aware that we need to be creative about how we plan the mines, the transition to low emission mining. There's a lot going on in that space.
To newcomers, an organization that's just stepping into the ESG world, what would be your advice? What should they first be thinking about entering this ESG world?
Well, look, if you're a company thinking about, what do I do now? If I'm just thinking about it, the real thing is to understand what your business is. Every business is different and has its own footprint and its own influence on their clients and products that they produce. So it's really important just to understand your business and your supply chain and your clients and your impact, because then you can design the next steps. It's a journey. It's not something you do in one day. The next steps, the next best step to move towards a business that you can be proud of your impact in that space.
I'm hearing here, that word pride, and it's great because that's a motivator. The fact that we've got an opportunity to do something different, bring out some big wins and make some changes. It's hard work to get that wheel moving, but once people get a few tastes of it, that can amplify over time. So that's great.
And if I would tie that a little bit back to mining, companies that are in an area where a mine exists might think about what waste products that a mine has might be able to be incorporated into a product that you have in terms of a circular economy approach. Is there crushed rock that might be helpful because you're building roads? Do you have a use for tires, waste tires, because there's a lot of those that get produced? Maybe you can recycle PPE. There's a lot of things that can be done in that space, but Australia is a massive landmass. So it really does come down to limitations of transport. So looking around your local area about what you could influence.
Thinking about that influence and that challenge, just when you were speaking, it was reminding me of a little catch cry I like to use. It's like, what would you like to tell your children or your grandchildren that you've achieved that did something towards it? And you just used a few examples in there. I helped reduce the amount of rubber that was wasted and, put it into some good use, or whatever the action is. So people have got that narrative that they'll be able to add to their story.
We are introducing a segment called Rapid Fire Tip for Action, which is an opportunity for our guests to provide actionable insights for our listeners to inspire you and take action. So Jenny, our question for you today is, what's one thing everyone can do right now to contribute to a better world?
I would like you to talk to the young people in your life and help them appreciate how minerals intensive the energy transition is, and to see if they would consider a career in the resources industry, because we need skills, we need passion to help us change practice towards producing the materials needed with much lower impacts.
Thank you, Jenny, for taking the time to share your insights with us. And one final question, is there anywhere listeners can go to find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
I'll probably just follow or connect with me on LinkedIn.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Business Revolution.
We hope you enjoyed diving deep into this world of business and sustainability together with us.
And remember, the revolution doesn't end here. It's up to each and every one of us to take the knowledge and inspiration from today's episode and turn it into action, your action.
Whether it's implementing sustainable practices in your own business or advocating for change in your community, every step counts towards building a better future.
And don't forget, you can always access our website. businessrevolution.earth is open for business day and night with resources, and you can see links to our past episodes. You can also listen to those on your phone and so on. There's plenty of ways to get involved. We're also planning to set up some meetings very soon, so get on our mailing list.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review The Business Revolution on your favorite podcast platform. This feedback helps us reach more listeners and amplify our impact. And obviously, this is something that you can resonate with, so it helps you as well.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. Together, we can revolutionize the way we do business and create a world that's sustainable for generations to come.
So stay tuned for insights, inspiration, and actionable steps to help reshape the way we do business for a better tomorrow.
And until next time, hang in there, keep innovating and keep inspiring around you, keep pushing for positive change in your organization and for a brighter tomorrow for all of us. I'm Mick.
I'm Alan.
And this is Cherry signing off. The business revolution starts with you.